Hi, everybody. It's Mike Kennedy, Vermont Bar Council. Trying to get back into videos instead of just blogging. During this video, if I punch myself in the face, that's because this is like take number, I don't know, 17,000. And I don't know that I have the energy to do 17,001. So I'm just going to punch myself in the face instead of stopping the video and starting over again. Okay, tonight I want to talk about conflicts of interest. By the way, I'm inside. Some people have asked me if I'm going to go back to doing the series of videos from my garage that I started when the pandemic started. Would love to. And actually thought, great idea. Let's get on that, Mike. Let's start doing that. Intended to do that tonight when I get home. Then I remembered, well, wait a minute. It's not very bright, Mike, to not do any videos from the garage all summer and then decide to start doing them again when it's freezing cold. I don't want to be freezing cold tonight. So I'm doing it from inside my house. Okay, conflicts of interest. If you've heard me talk or read my blog post before about conflicts, I suggest to lawyers not to get lost in the rules. Nothing against the rules, they're great. Obviously we need them, but they were written by lawyers in legalese and they're not necessarily meant for, mass simple consumption that makes it clear what lawyers should or should not be doing. So I've resorted, in particular with conflicts of interest, to imagery. I did a blog post a couple weeks ago, and many of you heard me say this before, that when it comes to any of the conflicts rules, trust your gut. Just keep that idea in mind. So I guess that's not an image, it's an idea. And the reason I say that is I do about 1,200 or 1,300 ethics inquiries per year. Around half involve conflicts. Of those, every single one starts with something like, hey, Mike, this feels like a conflict. Hey, Mike, I think I might have a conflict. Hey, Mike, this kind of feels wrong, but I wanted to get your thoughts. That's great. You can always contact me. I will always give you my thoughts. But I'll tell you this, in my experience, that gut feeling that, hey, Mike, this doesn't feel right, or hey, Mike, I think this might be wrong, trust that feeling. It's almost always right. Your gut is right. If your gut is telling you something is wrong, your gut is right. It's wrong. Don't do it. Trust your gut. I've used some other images. I'm not going to waste time getting into them, just as general props when it comes to conflicts. Here's what I wanted to use tonight when it comes to Rule 1.9. I haven't written a lot or talked a lot about Rule 1.9. Rule 1.9 is the rule that applies to situations in which a potential new client might create a conflict for you based on a prior representation. So it's the former client conflict rule. And the image that I want you to think about, instead of getting caught up in the rule, which I will read to you in just a second, is don't switch sides. If you can just remember that, you're as well off as memorizing the rule and all the comments to the rule. Here's how the image popped into my head, and because I think it's helpful. Maybe not, but it's my video. So I was at basketball practice tonight. And, a lot of you know I used to coach the boys team at South Burlington for a long time. Gave that up a couple years ago, 5 or 6 now. One of my best friends who helped me for a long time as my JV coach with the boys is now the varsity girls coach and at South Burlington, and I'm his assistant. And tonight we had practice. We were doing a drill that's designed to focus on defense. He was working with the defense because defense is really not my thing. So I was working with the offense. And what we were doing is this, and this does relate, this is not a basketball CLE. This relates to legal ethics. So I would huddle up with the offense and whisper to them so the defense couldn't hear 3 plays that we're going to run in a row. And the point is, we want the defense to have to learn to adjust to whatever the offense might be doing to them. In a game, we don't have the luxury of the other team telling us, hey, here's what we're going to do. I just wanted to let you know before you try to stop us. So I would whisper, and we want them to play, continuously. We don't want to stop after every single time. So what we do is I would tell the offense, we're going to do play A, then we're going to do play B as soon as play A is over, and then we're going to do play X. So A, B, X is the order we're going to go in. And so we run the first play, A, and somebody in the defense got, twisted her ankle or something, had to go out briefly. She's not hurt bad. So somebody from the offense had to go over and join the defensive team, and a sub came in to play offense. And all of a sudden, they're just ready to go again. And somebody on offense pointed out, well, wait a minute, the one who just went from offense to defense knows the plan, knows that we're going to run B and then X. She switched sides. That's not fair, coach. We got to start over. And she's right. So of course we started over. But switching sides is exactly what rule 1.9, our former client conflict rule, is meant to prohibit lawyers from doing. And as I thought about it and did a little bit of research, which isn't really research, I realized that the rule actually says that, and has forever, since the early 1800s. I'll get to that in a minute. So I know I said don't get lost in the rules, but let's just read the rule anyway. And as I read to you the rule, sorry, I'm looking for it. I lost my page while I was blabbering. Think to yourself, what's easier to remember? What Mike's about to read, or don't switch sides? So here's rule 1.9, duties to former clients. Paragraph A. A lawyer who has formerly represented a client in a matter shall not thereafter represent another person in the same or a substantially related matter in which that person's interests are materially adverse to the interests of the former client, unless the former client gives informed consent confirmed in writing. Whew. I feel like don't switch sides is a much better rule, or at least it's easier to remember. So let's look at the comments for a second. Again, I know I said don't get lost in them, but let's look at them because it's important. There's a little nugget in here that is exactly don't switch sides. So the rules, with people who have, lawyers who have questions about, does this rule apply to me right now, Mike? It usually comes down to, are the two matters the same or substantially related? That's usually the question. Because it's usually pretty obvious that this new client's interest will be materially adverse to my former clients. But is this the same or a substantially related matter? Comments 2 and 3 go into what is a matter and what is substantially related. How do we define those? And they're long and they're good, but they're not great. They're not necessarily helpful. When I read them, it kind of reminds me of The Simpsons, when Homer will be reading something and it's just, and what he says, if you've never seen The Simpsons, he'll just read words, and then doesn't really get anything from it. To me, that's what these comments are. But if you get to the last sentence in comment 2 to rule 1.9, it's like words. Oh, wow, look at this. Last sentence, comment 2. The underlying question is whether the lawyer was so involved in the matter, the original matter, that the subsequent representation can be justly regarded as a changing of sides in the matter in question. Isn't that it? Don't switch sides. Coach, she just switched sides. That's not fair. Bar counsel, she just switched sides and now represents somebody who is suing me. That's not fair. Isn't that a violation of the rules? Don't switch sides. That's how you should conceptualize it. And we've actually conceptualized it that way forever. Some of you may have read some of the posts I've done about a guy named Doug Hoffman. Sorry, I have to actually read from my own blog, this next part. But Doug Hoffman, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, was a practicing lawyer in the early, I think, 1830s or so. And he wrote what he called, 50 resolutions of professional deportment. And what those are, he wrote them for himself. And they essentially were things that he resolved to do or not to do as a lawyer. And they're great. First of all, they are widely regarded as the first written record of rules of conduct or ethics rules or rules of professional responsibility, whatever you want to call it, that apply to the law. They were written in 1836, 50 resolutions in regard to professional deportment. Sorry. He did one that applies to conflicts of interest. And it's the 8th one. Here's what he wrote. And think about this. I just read you rule 1.9 that we now use in 2021. I just said to you, don't switch sides. Here's what Hoffman wrote back in 1836, first ever written rule on conflicts of interest. If I have ever had any connection with a cause, I will never permit myself, when that connection has been severed, to be engaged on the side of my former antagonist. Nor shall any change in the formal aspect of the cause induce me to regard it as a ground or exception. It is a poor apology for being found on the opposite side, that the present matter is but the ghost of the former cause. Now, I love that. I actually like that better than don't switch sides. It is a poor apology for being found on the opposite side, that the present matter is but the ghost of the former cause. I think that's great. Not really that catchy though. Don't switch sides is pretty catchy. So that's what I'm going to go with. Anyway, that's my thoughts on rule 1.9 and former client conflicts. If you ever feel like you are switching sides, trust your gut, because you probably are. And if you are switching sides, it's most likely going to be a conflict of interest that could get you in some hot water down the road, whether via a motion to disqualify or via the complaint the former client is going to file against you. And trust me, they do, and they will. That's all I have. Thanks for listening. If anybody is still here, if you spotted or can spot or remember the reference to The Office that's in this video, I'll give you like 3 more seconds to check it out. If you let me know, I'll give you a prize if you get the right answer. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a great night.